James Hislop's research essay on the British attitudes to crime and punishment between 1760 to 1790, a survey of newspaper articles and court hearings concerning murder. Essentially, I am undertaking this research topic to gain a greater understanding of how the British population dealt with crime and murder in the 18th century. I will be addressing the opinions of the British population towards murder and capital punishment, and how the population of Britain was divided on this topic. I'll also be endeavouring to address the public displays of hanging and the culture that was inbuilt in the British population, and how it was used as a form of entertainment for the people of Britain. The newspapers of the time I'll also be addressing in how they portrayed murder and capital punishment, and the problems that came along with this. Some newspapers were biased, and some murders were seen as good, and the murders were portrayed in good light and sort of sympathetic towards them, while others were seen in a normal way as a murderer would be seen, in a bad light, detested, and a lot of newspapers mentioned the public displays of hanging and the forms of entertainment that brought along to the public. Personally, I find this topic fascinating and believe it is important and worthy of historical research. It gives us an understanding of how the justice system worked in Britain in the 18th century, which enables us to analyse and compare with other cultures of the time, and also compare with today's societies. It is also the period just before British started transporting convicts, which has obviously added importance to Australian history. I've decided to change a few things in regards to my primary sources based on the feedback from the first assignment. I first went with the random sampling idea, which in hindsight and your feedback probably wasn't a good idea. The court records I've decided to look at, I've decided that I'm going to choose a mixture of female and male defendants, as well as an even sample across the full 30-year time frame, as things may have changed between the 60s and the 90s, and there may be a few differences that I just want to make sure to check out. With the newspapers, I have taken your advice on board and added a further 5 more newspaper articles. It was probably clear that I didn't have enough articles to really get a good basis of knowledge on how it all played out in the 18th century in Britain. And my findings with such a small sample could have been skewed. So with the addition of more articles, it'll allow me to further the knowledge and understanding of how the media in Britain portrayed murder. In regards to the questions I had, I have decided to scrap them. After your feedback, I realised that they were weak and very general. Probably wouldn't be able to answer them well with my primary sources. I've taken on board your ideas for new questions, and they have already helped me enormously with developing my arguments for my essay, and it's made me get a lot more out of the primary sources that I've got. And it's just helped me with the themes and ideas. I've made steady progress in terms of dissecting my primary material. The Old Bailey records have given me many themes that I'll be exploring in my essay. One of the main themes I'll be addressing is the consistency of the legal processes. I've noticed throughout the records that some cases have elements of inconsistency in terms of how evidence is used and how the verdict is reached. When first thinking about this research topic, the notion of bias was one I was very keen to look at with my primary sources. I've always been interested in looking at bias in terms of in everything in life, and with this it's no different. And I've found many interesting points while looking at the records. and I'm looking forward to continuing that. Also, reading through the newspaper articles, I found a great amount of insight into how the media portrayed murder and crime, and also how the public dealt with crime and punishments. In some newspapers, I found the crime and the murder were portrayed in bad light, as I mentioned earlier, and which was one of my hypotheses. Like, obviously in today's society, murder is not seen as very good, and I expected that to be similar when doing this research essay. But something that I noticed was that some newspapers treated the crime as heroic, and some even gave sympathy to the perpetrator, which was something that I didn't expect, but it has made me more interested to read further and to see if this is something that is a norm with other newspaper articles. Overall, I'm happy with the progress I've made. I'm finding some of my hypotheses to be true, while others to be a fair way off the mark. With these new findings becoming ever more interesting, I'm looking forward to writing my research essay.